Speed Racer was indeed a show. Specifically, it was an anime made in the 60s about this 18-year-old race car driver who looks like he's 10, Speed Racer. With the help of the Mach 5, a special car with various abilities made by Speed's dad, he goes on races, much to the dismay of his father, and deals with terrorists, assassins, and just other jerks on the track, because basically those are all equatable to the same thing, really. It ran for 52 episodes, and is one of, if not the first ever anime to be dubbed over in English. In terms of anime, the show is like the Boomers' equivalent to One Piece, and they probably didn't even realize they were watching something made in Japan. It was quite a trailblazer for Western dubbing of anime, like we see it now with companies like Funimation. Now, is Speed Racer a good show?
All I have to do is take his car.
You'd better not.
No, God, no, it is not. As far as old anime are considered, Speed Racer has not aged very well. The animation is really stilted, some perspective shots are just like, wow. The voice acting is mostly pretty cheesy and not very well voiced since they're always talking super fast to match the lip movements, and on that note, they end up talking over each other sometimes.
I want Pops to build the engine. I know how you feel, Speed.
It's really kind of a shit show, but that being said, I would watch this shit all day. It's got that classic 60s cartoon/anime charm when children could ride in the back of race cars with monkeys, and guns could be held to the heads of characters with no sensors trying to take it out. There might be some baffling transitions and cuts in here, like really baffling. Like they'll take clips from the first episode, the 7th episode, and the 27th episode and put it into one episode of the English dub, but nonetheless, it's just really fun to make fun of with friends. Not only that, but this show has some serious balls. I was watching the first episode for reference, and several racers just straight up die on screen. You don't see the body or anything like that, obviously, but cars fall off of bridges, explode. It's some serious carnage, and I'm surprised with how much it got away with, considering how strict parent groups were about violence in children's media at the time. It might be the most dated shit ever, but I'd recommend watching it if you just like some batshit crazy fun. Of course, that isn't what we're talking about today. No, not at all. Today, for my close to and or passing of 42k subscribers, I'm gonna talk about a real drug trip from what else but my own childhood. Storytime, children. When I was a wee lad, the movie adaptation of Speed Racer was coming out. Did I see that movie? From what I can remember, no. Did I get the toys for it from McDonald's, not knowing what they were from? Yes. The thing is, I thought the toys were actually from a completely different piece of media that was released to coincide with the new movie, though it claimed to be its own property. That show was called Speed Racer: The Next Generation. This ain't your daddy, Speed Racer. This is something else. Something much worse. Before I continue with my explanation, I have to know, do any of you guys watching know anything about this cartoon? Because I've tried to bring it up in conversation and no one, not even my close friends who are animation nerds like me, have ever heard of it. I mean, I don't blame them for not remembering this Western cartoon that was meant to serve as a sort of sequel series to an anime made over 40 years ago at that point. Not only that, but the release dates of episodes are incredibly skewed. Okay, so try to follow me with this. The first season aired beginning in 2008 ended 2009. The second season started 2011 and ended in 2013. That's 52 episodes spread across 208 weekends. Meaning that on average, if you were some kid who wanted to watch their favorite Saturday morning cartoon about Speed Racer, you'd have to wait approximately every 4 weeks. But no, that would be space. That would make just a slight bit more sense. No. Nickelodeon, who obviously dumped this to their sister network Nicktoons, aired half of season 2 in 2011, then the other half starting mid-2013 and ending around August. I don't know if Nick was complete shit with airing this thing, or the episodes just weren't done and it took 2 years to finish, but either way, it reminds me heavily of The Nut Shack, another cartoon made around the same time in 2007 that had its second season in 2011. Even then, it didn't run as long as Speed Racer: The Next Fucking Generation, and that is a damn shame because I'd rather have more Nut Shack memes than whatever the hell this show is. Did anyone ask for a sequel series to Speed Racer? Well, whether or not anyone did, I'm gonna look at it because if nothing else, it's fun to talk about how shitty it is, even in comparison to the original series. Rev up those fryers and let me talk to you for a given amount of time about really terrible CGI cars. So who made this blemish on Nick's record that I only really watched as a kid since Cian was going through its edgy rebellious phase? Apparently some guy named Larry Schwartz, who made shows like Kappa Mikey, and if you the viewer know Nick, this show's animation quality makes much more sense now. Kappa Mikey was this show about this thick-line 2D animated Western character going to Japan and basically getting lost in anime land. And people love Kappa Mikey, and I actually think it's pretty funny, but definitely the animation was not the highlight. Another little tidbit, this guy made the dub for Peely, a Taiwanese marionette show, and it got dubbed over like a 4-kid show. The reason you've probably never heard of it is because CN was so ashamed of it they never aired it after the original broadcast. That tells you of what we're in for. Oh, and for an extra radish on the fuck you salad, this was produced by Lionsgate, creator of such classic animations as Gummy Bear, The Yummy Gummy Search for Santa, Food Fight, and Norm of the North. They actually helped in the creation of these properties and getting them to theaters. Do people realize how much shitty animation Lionsgate pumps out? You know what? Never mind. My point is that the animation is trashed here. I've covered terrible animation that was made for a webtoon, or it was even aired on TV once, then never again for a 40-minute movie, but this is a 52-episode show, and I'd rather watch dick figures. Like, damn, on the same network during the exact same year, Nicktoons released Iron Man Armored Adventures, a show in full cel-shaded 3D that looks pretty good for the time. I still think that show looks nice, but this aged like a PS1 cutscene. How could they choose to present this in 2008, let alone 2013? Reboot has better CG, and it was made 15 years before this show. On some occasions, the cars themselves have decent movement, but the backgrounds are more barren than a nerdy kid trying to host a big party with all the popular kids. The CG is even put in places it doesn't need to be, like for some random items of furniture or the inside of the cars. I'm thankful the show isn't fully CG, since there's a DVD cover showing the title character with it, and they just look in pain. If there is a god, this is what hell looks like. Despite how the characters don't look quite as bad on their own, the designs are really bland and move like a Newgrounds cartoon from 2005. Look at this mouth. That is so abnormal seeing only the mouth move while the character does almost nothing. This isn't a low-budget anime. This was made in 2008 as a cartoon. The mixing of the mediocre 2D Flash and even worse CG makes the entire thing look all the less professional, like they have multiple ideas for how the animation should be presented, but when the animators chose to do both, they couldn't find a way to blend it naturally, and just made it look like someone took the CG scenes and an 8th grader drew over it for his animation project. The lack of shading just makes the characters seem all the more flat on the clearly 3D backgrounds. Blending two different animation styles or types of animation is not impossible. When done correctly, it can look amazing and add tons to the presentation of your film or short, but when it's done like this, well, to put it in meme terms, this ain't it, chief. The story doesn't fit much better in the quality department. It's a story of the son of Speed Racer. Get ready for this. Speed, who doesn't know he's the son of Speed Racer, despite the fact that they have the exact same name. This show had one chance to name their character Speed Racer, the next generation, and they ruined it. I would have taken that chance to make that dumb joke in a second. He goes to a school centered around racing, run by the younger brother of Speed from the original series, Spritle, and the show actually got the original voice of Speed back to play the role of Spritle, which I think is actually pretty cool. Speed has 4 main friends at the school: Lucy, the stereotypical love interest and general mechanic; Connor, the smart character who's also a bumbling nerd cliché that likes the main character's dad; the robot monkey Connor was able to build because logic; and the cool kid / Speed's long-lost brother he never knew he had, X. Yes, his name is actually X, a singular letter. That's how you know you're a cool kid. You walk up and hear all the boys saying how their short names are so cool: Bob, Jim, Joe, Bo. Then you come in with X and they can't help but just bow down to you in your absolute power. Apparently this character had some impact on me since I named my Pokemon Ranger character X, and I could get into a full video about Pokemon Ranger, but right now we are focusing on X, and there is nothing else in this world at the moment. This guy is the pure embodiment of why the show is so fucking dumb. Naming a character after a single letter and making him the cool kid everyone wants to be like is the most fanfiction scenario I have ever heard, not to mention being the long-lost brother of the main character. Also, having Speed have 2 kids is one thing, but naming one of the kids Speed and expecting us not to guess he is Speed Racer's son in the beginning is just so moronic. This is a new show about supposedly the next generation, so let them have their own names instead of being Speed Racer Jr. and a single goddamn letter. To be fair, the anime, movie, and even the show have a character named Racer X, the older brother of Speed and Spritle, but that's not his actual name. His parents didn't come up with the name X X when he was born. He was called Rex Racer. I haven't even said the best part yet. The car Speed races is called the Mach 6. You get it? Because Speed was in the Mach 5, and this is the sequel series, the writers proclaim as they fragrantly stroke their own egos. The Mach 6 isn't just able to race and do little tricks to help get out of trouble either. That isn't nearly extra enough. This car has the ability to go camouflage like Megamind's car, travel through space and debris by transforming, and that's not even a thing only the Mach 6 can do, travel through dimensions to alternate ones, and even back in time to try and change the past. Here comes Speed Racer. He's trying to generate 1.21 gigawatts while being fired at by Libyans. There is a 3-part episode where the gang travels back in time and stops Speed's mom and grandfather from dying or, well, being injured. Any realism Speed Racer had, even on the smallest level, has been entirely ripped from the viewer's hands and spat on right in front of them. I could even suspend my disbelief to an extent if this series was set in the future of like 21XX, but no, this show takes place only 30 or 40 years at most after the original came out, when the most advanced piece of technology for stopping races with spikes on the wheels. Moving away from the dumb Wattpad level storytelling, let me tell you about the villains. In the original Speed Racer, most of the villains were trying to steal plans for the Mach 5, or the car itself, or were some kind of insane racer that went a little too far. In this, we have popular girl who's going out with cool kid and religious figure to me, X, but she isn't all that bad. Twins who are slightly dumb, and their car fringes on the gimmick that they are twins and alike. And finally, sleazy businessman with 2 Z's in his name trying to stop Speed & Co. from building a gasless engine for the Mach 6. Apparently he originally tried to stop it from being built because he's like an oil tycoon or something and doesn't want it to ruin his business, and I can get that. But after that drawn out conflict, which is just the characters going back and forth stealing the car and plans from one another and such, it really just starts to get painfully boring. Not all the episodes are up on YouTube, and I didn't want to pay $10 to buy the first season on Amazon because fuck, I'm not giving these people my money. But from the episodes I could find, the shadowy organization people are like the mysterious boss character we never see other than silhouette, another cliche, and they just constantly tell a villain to get the Mach 6. I would wonder why these shadow people want the Mach 6 so bad, but when you can travel across the space-time continuum in it and not even burn fossil fuels, then I think I'd want that too. But then again, if I were these shadow organization people, I'd want to get rid of the incompetent billionaire buffoon and his popular kid stereotypes after they've failed consistently more than once. I think at that point I'd just move on to a more suitable or interesting villain I'd actually want to watch instead of the same person for like 20 episodes with occasional short additions. The guy even goes to jail in some episodes, but what's even the point of having him be arrested? He's a billionaire. He'll be out before you can even say bad ending. Oh, and have I forgotten to mention the lovable dumb sidekick to villain man? Every cliche bad guy with a small brain who talks like this and has clothes that don't fit him? Well, yeah, he exists. Am I glad he exists? Well, what kind of question is that? How could I not think of this absolute idiot whose only purpose is to mess up scenes as a completely needed character in the grand scheme of this show? It's not like he detracts from the other characters who are barely given time to actually flesh themselves out beyond their various stereotypes and showing that they're kind of soft when people aren't looking sometimes. To be truthful, the characters are all just bland and uninteresting to watch other than when they're in car chases. The only actually interesting plot points have to do with the original Speed Racer and Trixie, his love interest later turned wife, who turns out to be the big bad committee lady, which makes me wonder why they didn't just continue with those two character stories, since it's much better than what we got with Speed and X racing each other in zero Gs and other shit. The original Speed Racer was known for, if nothing more, its wild and wacky car chases that could lead to Speed jumping out of his car and onto motorcyclists whom he would then proceed to beat up while still on it, which is kind of like being a lumberjack and sawing off the branch you're sitting on, but whatever, it was funny to see the animators try and convey this in such limited movement. If the CG looks half decent in any portion, it's in the action scenes, more so season 1 than season 2, which seemed to get a noticeable drop from the already mediocre quality. All the characters have unique cars that do specific things, but other than the Mach 6, the cars of the main villains don't really change that much. The popular girl can shoot a laser, and the twins can split their car to try and block off exits for another racer, and the show will make you remember these abilities as long as they're racing because they're just so damn amazing. Sometimes the cars have cool movements, and in interactions between each other, but other times the CG can look so bad it's like the program didn't fully render the textures or movements. When you can't even get the car chases to go well in a show about Speed Racer, then something has gone horribly wrong and you need to try and fix it. And that's sort of how I feel about this entire show, really. It had potential as far as concepts for TV show sequels go, but it was weighed down by bland, stereotypical characters who looked like they could be any Flash cartoon protagonists, terribly stilted animation, and villains that for the most part weren't interesting or worth watching. During the ending bits of Season 2, after they switched time, you can see bits of story the writers were trying to attempt to make the show easier to watch and maybe even interesting, but in the end it was just weighed down by the execution. So instead of that show, how about we talk about the other previous successor to Speed Racer that was made by the same company as the original, where he goes into the future and fights a blue alien named Handler using a machine called the Ezekiel Wheel to rule time. What the hell am I reading? Thanks so much for 42k subscribers, and a Merry Weedsmas to us all.